Okay, mic check 1, 2. Looking good. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today I have a very exciting game that I pulled from the qualifying rounds of the Lily International Tournament. And basically, some players get invited, some of the top ranked players from each of the major Go playing countries get invited to this tournament. It's a really big international tournament. And then there's also a qualifying tournament where anybody can kind of enter, and then the top several players from the qualifying tournament get to play in the main tournament. And this game was kind of interesting because it features a brand new Japanese one-dan, Nishi Takenobu, versus one of the most established and strongest Chinese professionals, Kongji 9-dan. So it's always kind of interesting to see a little bit of the 1-dan versus 9-dan matchup. There's usually a little bit of skill disparity, but it's still a very, very neat game. And before I get into the game, a few general announcements. I know it's been a long time since I did my last video. My work has been super crazy, and then I took a vacation and went on a bike tour around Northwest Oregon. Put a link to an Imager album of that if anybody's interested. And also, I just have to say, when I started doing this, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll get like 30, 40, 50 subscribers. That would be cool. That's like a classroom size, sort of, it's like enough to keep me going. But I'm actually over 250 subscribers, which I know in the world of YouTube is nothing, but in the world of Go, there's not a lot of Western Go players, and I'm kind of floored that I have over 250 subscribers. So that's super awesome. I love doing these videos for everybody, and I guess people are enjoying them because people keep watching, even though I haven't been uploading recently. People are still watching them, so that's pretty rad. And lastly, I have a new computer and headset, so if you have any feedback on the audio for this video in particular, I have kind of a new rig going. So any comments, questions on YouTube, and I've got some cool ideas for some other kinds of videos too. So hopefully you'll see some neat stuff coming up. But anyway, let's get onto the game. We'll start off nothing too crazy. Black approaches, and then white, this is kind of the first big option. White could obviously, respond in the lower left corner, but it's a little more active to approach, counter approach, I guess this would be, rather than just respond to black's approach. So, and we'll see white's strategy is kind of just to play like fast and aggressive, and I think that the goal here is he's trying somehow to throw Kongji off balance and get a good result somewhere so that he's got a fighting chance in this game. And right away, we see white play this loose sort of counter pincer on the bottom, creating a fairly complex situation. And for black right now, the key element that black needs to realize strategically, and even if you're double-digit Q, if you're looking at this position, the most important thing for black to realize right now is that of these two circle stones right here, don't allow them to connect. Because if they connect, if we just hair off and am like, oh no, maybe this stone will get pincered, let's make a base for it, and white like comes like this or something, well now, yeah, we can live in the corner, no big deal, but the problem is that now white's all connected and strong on the outside. Our corner is completely sealed in, so these stones are not having any bearing on the rest of the game. Maybe we'll get 10 points in the corner, but that's going to be it, and white's going to get all this thickness and to use on the outside. Basically, we have to sort of realize that, like, immediately, you know, we have to come out in some way, shape, or form. Now, this is not the only move. We could also consider attaching on top of this stone. We could consider doing a knight's jump. Obviously you'd have to read and be like, because if you do a knight's jump, what happens if white just cuts you? Can you handle that? If you can't, then don't do the knight's jump. You got to read those 3, 4 moves and see what's going to work. But as long as you realize strategically that letting the two white stones connect would be really bad, then you understand something very deep and very important about Go, which is that a lot of it's about connecting your stones together or keeping your opponent from connecting their stones together. And so what we see is black right away defends the corner, takes a little bit of territory. No, don't close it. And then just comes out as simply as possible with the diagonal move, separating the two white groups. Super natural, super easy, as long as you realize that that's what's needed in this position is to keep white separated, you're doing good. White plays this kind of, light dancing maneuver to get this group out, which is pretty cool. Black kind of pokes in at the weakness here, and then we can see right now, there's White would really like to sort of play at this point at R7, which would give this stones kind of good shape and connect everything securely. But Black just comes out, and here, White does kind of manage to connect this group out here, but Black built up a big wall facing a high stone and took a corner, and this is pretty slick. I really like this sequence. White comes down here, and the cool thing about this is that in this position, I think Black. Oh yeah, Black defends the corner, and then White comes and pincers this stone, taking advantage of this sort of wall that he built. But if we go back, when White descends here, the cool thing in this position is that Black can't actually cut here right now, because at the moment, White can just Atari and cut. And first of all, like, we've got two options here, so let's read out a little bit. If Black Atari is on this side, White just comes down, and we can see here that White's got 3 liberties to Black's 2 liberties, and so Black's going to lose these 3 stones. So it doesn't do us any good to cut if we immediately lose the 3 cutting stones that we've got. So since we know the Atari here doesn't work, let's consider the Atari here. And the problem here is the same, is that at this point, if we could come out again and threaten, to do something here, maybe we'd have something going. But the reality is that if we come out here, this is just an Atari, and yeah, we could wrap around these stones, do something like this, but this would be Gote. White's not even going to bother connecting here at this point because it's just 2 stones. Or actually, White could consider connecting here because Black would almost have to defend this cut, like do something like this. But saving 2 stones, you might as well save that for a co-threat later anyway. It's not worth a move right now. But regardless, White captures, gets an eye, connects the stones. It's not working for Black to cut right now. So now on the other hand, something that we'll keep in mind is that if we, go along the game, if Black ever gets a stone, somewhere over here, let's see, would this work? I don't know. Let's see. And White ignores this to do something else. Now I think you can get away with this because now uh, you can capture these 3 stones of White's before White can capture you. So there's, just some Aji lingering in that situation, but I do think it is cool how Black can't actually cut directly in this position. It's kind of a neat Tsuji that White uses. So, White got a wall, Black got a wall, Black got a corner. Pretty good result all around. And then this is good pincer, kind of coming. This wall isn't super, super strong. There's still some cutting points in it, so it's, there's other options. You could come a line closer, I think, but White goes with the 2-space high pincer. And Black kicks off a really complicated Joseki. I actually had to look this up because I had not really seen this in actual play, but basically, if White's strong in the area, this is an option that Black can consider. And basically, at this point, Black can actually Hane on top here. White cuts, Black descends, and you can see this is getting really complicated because if you don't know how this goes, it's kind of like, well, can these white stones survive? I'm not too sure. And then there are other options in here, but we're just going to stick with this. Black makes this weird looking empty triangle, which fills the liberty on the inside group, which basically Black can keep the corner here. And you also have to know this weird kind of looking inside turn from this group to keep the liberties on these white stones down. And now White actually diverges from the Joseki here to play this Hane. But what's typical now is for White to play this, and it's also possible, depending on the ladder, for White to attach directly. But White needs a successful ladder going up to the upper right corner, and as you can see, there's a black stone there. So this is not working in this position. So White plays here, which is basically saying, hey, maybe I can escape under the bottom or surround these stones and rescue everything. That would be kind of cool. And typically what'll happen is Black will push here and then come back like this, and then Black will have to come and securely capture the corner. White builds up some outside influence. Pretty straightforward. sort of result, even though there's that kind of hairy situation in the corner. White just gives up the 3 stones in the corner in this variation of the Joseki. But white, instead of playing the sequence down here, instead tries to get a stone facing the star point up here, and I think, in my opinion, ends up with an inferior result. So black comes back right away to capture these stones. And now white doesn't quite have the same forcing sequence because the stones in the corner have one fewer liberty. So, white comes back and plays the same point, but it's not quite as forcing. So we get into this, and now black can just Tanuki because white playing here isn't Sente anymore, essentially. There's a little bit of trickiness, and actually what we'll see is over the next few moves, uh, you know, white plays this sequence over here, but at some point black comes back and cuts here. Uh, you know, anyway, the problem with white's formation in this, as opposed to this is the orthodox response, and you can see there's no cutting points in white's shape over here. In the game, however, there end up being, there's a lot of ways for black to come through this gap right here, and that's really bad Aji to leave behind because it's like, we have to make sure that this cut isn't working. We have to make sure this attachment isn't working. We have to make sure that, black can't roll here and then extend. Like maybe we have to defend down here now and black can come out. There's just several different ways for black to cut. And that means we have to keep track of a lot of different variations to make sure that our position is secure. And it's always dicey leaving behind a big gaping hole like this in your formation because if we had if black had to come back and do this, and we could unify all our stones, this would be a great result for white here. There's a lot of thickness. Black did not get that much territory and is pretty much entirely sealed into the corner. Like, yeah, black could push on the second line, but we're happy to let him do that. It could jump out on the second line, but again, we're not really that worried about black making 1 point of territory with one whole move at the beginning of the game. Is just not worth it. So but as it stands, black gets Sente, comes and jumps out here, and I just don't see these 2 white stones at c6 and c7 really helping all that much, given that in order to get those 2 stones, we had to leave this big gaping hole in our formation. I don't know. But this is a really good point. This is sort of the hinge of, black's framework on the upper right and white's framework along the bottom. And it's really easy to tell, if we put a white stone here instead of the black stone, how much influence there is, like, the difference between the white stone being here and the black stone being here, kind of at the joining point of both players' frameworks. I think visually it's pretty striking. Like, yeah, black's maybe gonna have to, defend or something, or could play tighter, or even do something over here, something like this. But in the actual game, black gets that point, and you can just see it kind of now. This upper framework, it's kind of like, wow, if white does something passive and black, you know, if white plays passively here, like this could get really scary really fast. So, it's just something to keep in mind, how important, this fulcrum of influence is at M9 for both players. Pretty cool. But black takes it. White decides to come straight in, which, might be necessary. It's definitely committing. You're definitely committing yourself to a course of action. Black does the really natural thing, attaches to it, makes it kind of heavy, keeps it from going into the corner, comes out high to attack in the future. Pretty standard. And then white comes all the way over here because the normal move here doesn't work very well in this situation because, well, first of all, it's not threatening to connect back to these stones over here. So it's only a single purpose move. It's only getting a base for this top group. But even in that, black can kind of invade right away, either here or here. Actually, this would not be as good, because in this case, white would be pretty happy to do something like this and then just jump out. Because this would be, yeah, obviously you took away the base on the side, but this is pretty thick shape, with these stones now, and it seems like white's going to be able to escape fairly easily. So what might be more damaging is to come here, and because there's this thick wall over here, this is really hard for white to handle. there's, because, black can just come down and threaten to connect underneath. It's not working so well. So in this shape, white comes a line further, basically saying, okay, if you do something like this, I'll just connect underneath, and this is the actual game. But if you prevent me from connecting underneath, by doing whatever, well now, I mean, this is way better shape than just having one three space extension, even though it is open at the bottom and black can still invade. This is just, these four stones have a nice relationship to each other. And it's going to be very hard to kill, even with this strong wall looking down at them. In this type of situation, too, you kind of have to be careful as black to make sure that your wall doesn't end up just being a heavy string of stones as well. Because as soon as white jumps out here, black is going to have to worry about this wall coming under attack, which is never fun. Never fun when your opponent turns around and starts attacking your walls. This is usually a sign that something's gone awry. But anyway, so black comes here, and basically white's just saying, I just wanted to reduce the right side. I'll give up these two stones, just create a living group over here, save these stones, make sure black can never cut them off. Black jumps up, and white actually just says, okay, that's good. I've got the stones connected along the second line. I took a chunk out of the right side. I did it in Sente. Black had to come back and capture, or reinforce the wall. Now I'm going to approach up here. Pretty good all around. Now black throws in a little forcing move down here, and as a result of this, now this Atari and coming out is kind of a real thing where it's like, ooh, now what is white going to do? But doesn't happen right now. Black kind of comes out, and again, this is a good thing. Is like in this situation, what we have to do as black is make sure that the two circle groups rather, don't connect to each other. Like that would be a travesty. If we let white connect these three weak stones to each other, they won't be weak. They'll be a big, thick group. So we have to think about that. And so black just separates them. Comes out with the knight's move, says no. And the other idea with this is that hopefully we can swallow these two white stones like on a really big scale. By coming out with maybe white, makes a base. And we can just kind of like, okay, we'll come here, white defends, and then, maybe we'll jump out here. And what we can see now is that, with all these moves we've made to expand our moyo, that now these two stones are way, way behind enemy lines. Like, white can't threaten to come out like this, like we're not even worried. We're just like, no, this is all ours now. And that's what we mean when we say capturing on a large scale, because when we go back and look at this first attacking move, obviously black is trying to swallow these up, because if black actually goes in and plays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to capture 2 stones, that's great for white. White's ecstatic. It's not efficient to capture stones and remove them from the board. Like it takes 6 moves to capture 2 stones to get 4 points. Like that's less than a point per move that we're getting for, our trouble, which is terrible. Unless it's the very, very end of the end game, you don't want to be playing moves like that. So that's just, part of overall strategy. You don't want to be forced to take stones off the board because it's an inefficient way to get territory and make points. White jumps up, it's similar to making a 2-point extension, but a little more active, and we definitely want to be more active because we've got our own high stone backing us up right now. If this were a black stone, this would be a little dubious because now black could just come in like this. Like I said, if this stone at C16 were black, this would make a lot more sense. But and now we're kind of adrift. But with a white stone right here, if black does come in like that, well, now this black stone's just under attack. We're not really worried about it. It's like, well, we've got 3 white stones attacking your 1 stone. It's not an attacking stone. Just something to think about. Instead, black approaches over here to kind of keep this influence or potential influence in the lower left with this big gaping hole here. It's kind of not really real influence at the moment, but it could be if white gets a move over here. Now it's influence, and black wants to make sure that there's no coordination between these high stones on the top and a big thick white position on the bottom. So black approaches. Very basic maneuver. White chooses this foot sweep maneuver, which is interesting. And then black switches up to the top, which is, this is a move that shouldn't be lightly, imitated, but basically black's going to say, I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on here, use the Aji of my approach stone, and just see what I can make happen up on top. White attaches, black comes out, white jumps out, and then black attaches over here, and I think black gets a good solid result from this. So I feel like white might have made an error somewhere, because we can see that, white started with the corner and an extension and a little bit of a base on top, and now black has come in with an invasion, and white only jumped out and is making a little bit of a wall, but basically loses the entire corner. Uh, and this black stone's still on kind of an awkward point. Like it feels like white's, like white's gonna have to be careful that this cut doesn't work because this black stone is right here. That's something to be concerned about. It's like right now it's not a concern, because we can just do this and capture it. But notice that, if there's any black stone anywhere around here, that changes. Or, for example, a black turn here is Sente, because if white ignores it to do, whatever, then now this cut is working, because this is an Atari, and then black's going to come out, and we just lost, like, basically this is a full-blown collapse for white. So, it's just kind of, it doesn't seem like white's getting much use out of this wall here. Nonetheless, white, built this wall and then came back down here to seal black in, and now, well, the left side does look pretty good for white at this point. Um, Black comes back to, make sure these stones are captured. It's a little unfortunate, has to defend there, but now white has to defend though, because like I said, the stone's in a really awkward spot, and even this move to kind of limit its Aji and movement is kind of awkward. Like this just looks like an awkward shape, like black's nice, real flowing. White's having to come back and do this kind of 2-point jump to clamp down on the stone. It doesn't seem like this is a great result for white, because now black has Sente. Black can do something about this, cavern of white potential on the left side, and black does it. Actually, black, first of all, play some forcing moves over here. This is kind of an interesting sequence. What this does is it keeps white from having an eye in here, which is pretty cool. And then black actually gets the chance to jump over here and defend this corner, which is also really good. And gets it in Sente, no less, because before these forcing moves, what we can see is that a white move in here is actually really dangerous to black. Like, black has to respond to this, pretty much. Otherwise, there's all kinds of nasty things back in the corner that can be done. So, and also white is potentially looking at just this push and looking at these two cutting points as well. So there's definitely a lot that could go on, but unfortunately white doesn't get to pressure this corner anymore, which might have been a little bit of an oversight, because I feel like some of these moves, maybe even just this, yeah, if we go back a couple, maybe even just playing this to reinforce our wall, still sketchy. Still sketchy for black. It feels like black needs a move in the corner to keep it. Yeah, or maybe there's a I don't know. It's complicated either way, and I don't want to get too much into it. But unfortunately, black gets to defend before white gets to do anything. And even though this is open at the bottom, it's like we know how much damage the monkey jump is going to do, and we can handle it. So if white comes back to do this, black's not super worried about that. Black probably just... Oh, actually, the monkey jump might not even be Sente in this, which means, yeah. Does black have to... black might still have to come back and defend something here. I'd be worried about leaving this position as is to do something somewhere else, and then white peeping. It's kind of dangerous. It's kind of dangerous. I don't know that white can actually pull anything off, but, it creates a really dicey situation for all parties. It doesn't quite look like this is working for white, but leaving that type of Aji behind, they're obviously co-threats. So if a co starts somewhere on the board, white's got like 5 co-threats against the corner, which is never good. So just things to think about. Let's go back to the game. Okay, here we go. This is really cool. So this is what black comes up with to reduce white's potential on the left. First of all, this is cool because, black is saying, hey, you can take fourth line territory totally, and this actually white actually does defend on the fourth line. Yeah, you can have all that nice fourth line territory on the left. It's not enough for you to win, just to be honest. So, because black's got this area over here, got the corner territory, the corner territory, the corner territory. Probably going to have all four corners. So black is definitely leading in territory. If white gets one side and you get four corners, not really that big of a deal. And white's only other real territory is maybe 10 points down here, 5 points up here, and this is pretty good. Maybe like 25 points on the left. But it's just not enough for white to catch up. And what's also really cool is the placement of this black reducing maneuver, because basically the first thing that I'll look at when black plays a move like this, and this is kind of just a technique for narrowing down the options that you consider when you do your reading, when you're trying to figure out where to move, is to try some of the most aggressive lines first and see what happens. So in this case, white's most aggressive response would be to cap and try and kill it. So, that's one of the first things I think of. Like, if black tries to reduce me, is like, well, can I just cap it and kill it? Because that would be sweet. If my opponent made a bad overplay like that and I was able to punish it severely right away, that would be awesome. But in this case, what you can see is it's like, well, if black even just jumps out, and black could do other things like attach, or play a diagonal move, but even if black just plays a diagonal move and runs, what we can see is that black's going to escape fairly easily. Now, yeah, okay, we could switch directions at some point and do this, but in black would probably not just play, one line moves, but black's got friends. And then also, too, the way that black can come out through this gap, black could consider dodging the other way as well. Come down here and, see if we can connect down here. And if white spends a move now to do this, well, now it's just kind of like, well, obviously black isn't going to get surrounded and captured. So we can see that the cap is obviously not working in this case. Now, if black had done something, crazy and jealous and come all the way down here, now we can see this cap looks pretty awesome. There's, how is black going to get out of this? Black, we obviously have to worry about, black cutting here and trying to capture these three stones down here, and it gets complicated, but we can just visually see right away that black can't immediately escape. So this becomes a candidate move. This cap is something that we now are like, well, maybe we can make that work. Let's read a little deeper, see what we do if black does this and tries to cut over here. But, we can keep black in, with this move. So it's something to consider. In fact, even if black comes one line closer, we can see that it's just that much harder. I might even do something like this. And if black Atari's this now, I might even just counter Atari, say goodbye to the territory on the bottom, and take, capture these three stones on a huge scale. Say, okay, yeah, you ruined 10 points of territory down here. I just took like 20 by capturing these three stones. It's good for me. I'll do it. So that kind of gives you some idea about, why, black holds all the way back to here, is that, white playing to defend the side territory, even though it's on the fourth line and it's good size, it's not enough to win the game. And this is kind of passive. It's kind of like, well, we've got this wall, we extended 2 points from it, then we extended 2 points again, and then we've got 2-point extension to this other wall. Not super efficient. It's like white's not getting that much territory for having spent so many moves to develop the left side. So that's pretty good. And then black just defends the top right corner. So we can see now black's got 4 corners. White's got a little bit on the left, and that's really about it, a little bit on the bottom, and like I said, maybe if things go well, 5 points on top. White, realizes, well, I've got to break up as much territory as possible. So this is good. It kind of reduces while threatening to pull these 2 stones out, which is pretty cool. Black threatens to cut through, and this is a really tricky fighting sequence. Because what happens is white comes back to cut off the 1 black stone, and black actually comes back to defend and securely capture these 2 white stones by protecting against this cut. Kind of interesting. White throws in a forcing move over here. Black obviously doesn't want that to get captured. Comes here. Black defends. If Black omits this defense, and comes back to, I don't know, cut here or something like that, White's got a really good move here, which even makes it a little dicey in terms of, let's see, this would probably be better. Well, actually, no, this would probably be better. Uh, Black kind of needs another move to defend the corner now, I think. It would seem really dicey to Nuki from this situation and let White play inside, but maybe Black could get away with it. But, Black doesn't want to, have to defend the corner and lose all his territory. So just comes back and defends. And this does a good job too, because now this White group is basically undercut on both sides by Black stones, which means even if White defends here, Black can still, attach or jump in, threatening to, either connect back to the stone over here, or if White figures out a way to stop that, Black can do this to connect to the stone over here. White's not getting any territory up here now that White is undercut on both sides, essentially. So White continues, still threatening to pull these stones out, which is pretty cool. White's getting a lot of use out of them. Black extends from this stone, which is kind of a weird one because, without the cut here, it's kind of hard to envision what these stones are going to do for us. White peeps, which I think White was expecting that Black would have to connect at one of these 2 points, because this Atari works really well. White does not want to have to come back and save the stone, so White pushes through, kind of a mutual damage situation. And then White comes back to connect these two, because we can see at this point, that if White does, does something else, and this cut happens, these 2 white stones are getting swallowed up on a pretty large scale as well. So White has to come back and connect, keep these all good. And then this also threatens to pull these stones out again by, playing some forcing moves in there. So Black comes back and defends again. So, White gets a pretty good reduction here. This is no longer huge territorial victory. I mean, it is pretty much 5th line territory, which is awesome, but it's not too huge. White kind of is like, well, maybe I can net these stones, capture them. And Black is really not concerned. Black just comes out. White Hanes. And this is a part where if I were White, I would get really scared, because we looked earlier at kind of how there were a lot of ways for Black to cut through this shape right here. And now we have this sort of running battle that's going right into that area where we have all this bad cutting Aji for White. And like I said, it just gets really hard to keep track of all those potential variations. And at this point, White's kind of trying to cut off this Black stone and get a really large area on the left. And Black's like, no, I don't think so. Especially because you'll note that Black can't run to this top group anymore after some of these forcing moves that White got in. So, White limited Black's avenues of escape. Now it's just connect to the right or connect to the bottom. Doesn't have 3 options of how to get out, which is good. White cuts here, and now Black does put this Aji into action. White has to do that, and comes back and connects. White Ataris, Black connects. White tries to seal in, but Black cuts again, and White actually resigns here, because this pretty much is the end of the road for White. It's what White would like to happen is come out, and if Black had to come back now and capture these 2 white stones down here like this, White could Atari, force them to connect, and then either connect or Atari on this side. And we can see here that in this position, Black stones look pretty weak. White's got thick groups on both sides. This isn't a working variation for Black. Unfortunately, Black doesn't have to come back and capture these 2 white stones like this. Black can come out like this. And, White can't save these stones now, unfortunately, because now that would just be Black just captures these 2 and is out and connected and separated White and ruined all this territory in here. But basically, if White continues to try fighting like this, Black can just keep coming out. And then at this point, I think black could even consider pushing one more. And then even now, if black comes back now and white tries to save this territory, well, now, black can push in here, capture these three white stones. There's just too much of a reduction, and white can't handle it. But it all comes down to the fact that, black gets, before activating this Aji, and this is pretty slick, black gets these three triangled stones kind of facing the cutting area, and then slices through, and white just can't handle this Atari here. So at this point, there's no real way, and black could consider other things. Black, if white comes out, there's lots of ways black could do stuff here. Black could push from this direction, because now there's all these other issues of like this is not working. Black is getting in and reducing this, and white needs a huge left side to stay in this game. And basically, because white has all this bad cutting Aji at the bottom, once black gets a few stones facing the area with the bad cutting Aji, it's pretty much all over. And so we go from here, boom, 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 and white resigns because there's just no way to handle this. So, definitely a little one-sided, this game, but we're talking about a game between a brand new Wondan, who's probably really young, and one of the most established players in China, Kongji Nindan. He's been at times rated the #1 player in China. I believe he's still in the top 10 of their live ratings, active ratings. And yeah, but a cool game with some leftover Aji hanging around here and there, and a young player taking on an established pro, and unfortunately not doing super well, but still, I think it's a fun game to watch. And that will do it for this time. Thank you for watching.